Hello everybody. I know you can't see me, but I had a couple requests to do some educational type videos, so I thought the most basic thing to get started with was how to properly change the strings on your instrument. So there's a couple things that are necessary for that and a couple things that just make it a little bit easier. Obviously, you're going to need strings. This is about the most basic, common, most used set of strings that you'll find on the market, and they're called the Diodario 12 gauge. And 12 gauge is going to be your most common string gauge for acoustic guitar. This can vary if you're playing heavier or if you're tuning down to D. I usually recommend 13s because it'll put about the same amount of tension on the strings. So it's the equal amount of pressure essentially that's being put on the neck, and that's all good for the longevity of the guitar. You never want to over stress your guitar neck. So I tune pretty much always in standard, so we went with the 12 gauge. For my own personal use, I do like the John Pierce strings. I'm particularly fond of that brand. I like their sound. And Martin has put out a new type of strings called the Retro series, which have a chrome plating instead of the phosphor bronze that you see on most common guitar strings. So, that all being said, you need some sort of strings to get started. And other things that make the job much easier are going to be a string winder. And the reason is specifically on acoustics, not for the sake of winding the strings, but they have this little divot in the back here, which allows you to pop out your existing pegs. And that's basically the easiest way I've found to do that without damaging the pins or scratching the guitar or anything like that. Other things that are helpful, I'm using here a stand. You can get these at Guitar Center or online pretty much anywhere. And it's just a little fold out. It collapses nice so you can put it right in your guitar case. But, you have to go change strings, and, I've experienced many times where that can be a real pain trying to hold one end and do it and all that. So giving yourself just a little bit of space is definitely very helpful. So we've got him set up there. And other things that I like to use, this is called Guitar Honey. But there's many different products you can buy, and it's essentially different oils that you'll put on the neck when you change strings. And I always like to do that every time I change strings, because especially in the winter months, which we're coming up to right now, wood has this tendency to dry out with the atmosphere, which also dries out. And by coating it every time you change strings, which should be, roughly off the basis of once a month, you'll find that that's a good gauge for changing those. So yeah, I always recommend that. The better shape you keep your fretboard in, the better your guitar is going to play and hold up, last, and everything else. In addition to that, we have some string cutters, because that's going to be necessary. We have the rag for going over the guitar, cleaning up a little bit, and of course wiping off any excess moisture that might accrue from the spray. And then I also like to use the Snark tuner. It's a great way to quickly pull it up to tune. And out of all the tuners basically that I've found online or have used in my practice, this is definitely the best. It works off vibration, so you immediately get a perfect reading essentially. All right, so the other thing I have that I kind of wanted to showcase here, if anybody's watching, my goal is to upload this video to YouTube. So if anyone is new to owning an acoustic guitar, what I have here is a humidifier pack, and essentially you just drape it between each end of the strings, and they have these little packs that are two-way humidification systems. So if it gets too dry, if it gets too wet, it's going to help regulate that, so again your guitar keeps in good shape. If you have a laminated guitar, or a cheap guitar, to put it in lay terms, you know, most beginner guitars, you won't be made from a solid piece of wood, so it's not as much of an issue or a threat or a worry. They can withstand a little bit more pressure. But when you're using an actual solid piece of wood, these things become much more scary. And I've had cracks develop in guitars that got too dry, so it can be very, very upsetting when you go through that. But the first thing you want to do is just remove the tension from all the strings. And I always like to play the note while I do it. It always guarantees that you're not turning it backwards and over tightening it. And then once you get it to the point where you're not making any sound anymore, you know, then you're pretty much good to stop. But we'll remove all those there. Some people will argue that it's actually better to replace one string and then take the next one off, replace that string, and so on. And there's a couple reasons why I don't do that. And the first one is it's going to be more of an issue if you have a through body instrument, and usually you'll see that more on a bass or on certain electric guitars. And what that means is there's one piece of wood running the whole length of the instrument. And you know, it's those guitars specifically and basses are built with constant tension in mind, so that's why those folks argue that. But on a regular guitar, it's not going to really be an issue. You're going to be changing them right away, so they won't be without tension for very long. And the other reason is because I like to coat the fretboard. It's much more difficult to do that if you always have strings on the instrument. So we'll continue unwinding these here. Alright, now we've got them good and loose. I'm going to take a quick drink of water here, because it's a little dry where I am. But our next step is going to be cutting the string and then removing the pegs. Okay, so I like to cut really right up here by the nut. And again, the reason this is okay is because there's no tension on the strings. If you would do this to a guitar that was tuned, you would not have very good results, to put it mildly. And again, it can be damaging to the instrument. So, but now they are all removed, we can go ahead and unwind these. We'll come back to this later, but you're going to see, actually, I might be able to make it easier for you to see here. Which way? I need to go that way. Not really sure why I have it mirrored, but there we go. Now you can see a little bit better here. Like I said, we'll come back to this later, but I always unwind mine this way, and it's important to have multiple windings when you are restringing. And that's something that gets overlooked a lot. You know, a lot of people say, well, you just pretty basic, right? You change your strings. But it is important to remember that, you know, you want to always have at least 4 winds on each string if you can. And it really helps with tuning stability. It greatly reduces the chance that you're going to break a string when you're playing. So it's just a good thing to do. And you know, you'll find it's not difficult either. It just requires a time or two of doing it so you know what exactly you're looking for in terms of how much slack you have to leave to start winding. So we've cleared the top of the fretboard, and now we just have to remove the bottom here. We'll come back this way and use this tool. You just want to kind of grip under it and then use the leverage there to pop it out. And then again, it makes your life much simpler. Now one thing you'll see here as I take these out, I have another ball on top of the ball that comes with it. You know, it's not totally clear there to be able to see it, but and a friend of mine, when I used to work at Guitar Center, gentleman that came in and chopped there all the time showed me this trick. And he came in to restring his guitar one time, and the reason for that is these pegs have a flat bottom to hold the string down, you know, in place. And a string just has that one ball that has to sit upright because of where the hole is, you know, and how it wraps around. So when you're pushing down on that, it always puts it at an angle. And it changes slightly the angle of where the pressure is coming down on the guitar. It comes in instead at more of an angle. And if you coat, essentially, the string before you put it into the guitar, just go right down through there with that, with one from either the previous set of strings or whatever they're on. You know, you do it once and then you're good to go. But yeah, you just unwind that from the previous string, or you can cut it, you know, from the previous string, and then you've got one to use forever. And you just throw it on top of the string, and then when you restring it, it actually pushes that pressure down equally instead of off at that angle. So it's a cool little trick that he developed, and I think it is cool to share with the folks out there. So we'll go through here and get the rest of these out. These Martin pegs are really nice. You know, it actually just is the right size to fit in there snug, and you don't lose it when it pops out. You know, in older guitars or different model guitars, or once you've done this for a long time, you know, and these plastic pegs wear, or, you know, whatever kind of pegs you have, then they tend to fly all around and are a big mess. But that's something, again, that helps by using this extra ball theory. When you go to pop them out, because the pressure is even, it'll actually lift a lot nicer. You know, when it's at that angle, sometimes they can be a little difficult to pop out, or you know, just give you some trouble. So we'll pull all these out here. Okay, and you can see we've got our little extra balls on each of those, and we just have to take care not to lose them as we take them off. Okay, got all 6. I always like to wind these up pretty good so they don't fly all over the place. Alright, so we can throw those away. We won't need those anymore. Same with these. And now we're ready to get ready, essentially, to coat the guitar. First thing I like to do is just kind of go over it, any loose dirt that might be on there. It's amazing how much dirt accumulates on the fretboard of a guitar, you know, especially, I'm not even digging in, but especially around the frets here. And I always like to kind of frame my finger a little bit and just get in at each of the sides if I can. Because it does, just a tremendous amount of dirt, and you know, the camera's not really picking up there because it's a little too bright, but it's just tremendous, the amount of dirt. And it's a good reason why before you play you should always wash your hands. I have an OCD guitar friend who, former bandmate, and who was, you know, nuts about that. He couldn't play guitar if he didn't wash his hands, and even doing that, you know, you'll still accumulate a lot of dirt. It's just the process of oxidation, and you know, as you play, you're wearing away skin cells and all that. But this guy was really due for it because there's quite a bit of dirt. Of course, it's also been played a lot recently, so that definitely contributes to it as well. But, you know, all these things just really make life a little bit easier for you in the long run. You know, you never have to worry about down the road having problems because you know your fretboard is in tip-top shape. And, you know, when a fretboard feels nice, it is a lot more likely that you're going to play it. If it feels gross or uncomfortable, you're not going to want to play it. You know, if as soon as you touch the strings, all this old dirt is there and it muddies up the sound, well, obviously it's not going to sound very good. And, you know, I think the point of playing the guitar is to get it to sound good. So, you know, if I was doing this on my own time, well, relatively, I would probably get a little bit more in there, just be a little bit more thorough, but for the sake of this, we'll move along. I like to do one coat. People argue about this too. I have one friend who's a guitar tech who's, you know, he very, very lightly oils everything. I like to go heavy. I like to really let it get in there and soak, because any excess I'm still going to wipe away. And it's, you know, this stuff doesn't cost that much. You know, it's $7 or $8 and it lasts forever. So, you know, we give it a moment to kind of soak in, and then I'll use this to sort of help get rid of some more dirt that may have been sticking before, and just go over each fret. And these are the things, again, you know, it can seem like a little bit of overkill, but, I mean, from my experience of buying and selling guitars, it seems like it's about a 50-50 with acoustics, that either the bridge is starting to pull up or there's curvature to the neck that you can't get rid of. And when those things are happening, it's not good. It's not good at all. You know, we wouldn't even be able to buy any guitars like that. And you know, a lot of people were upset, but it's the reality. You know, if you let your neck get warped, your instrument's never going to sound as good as it could or should or used to. And myself, this guitar is my 0015M Martin. It lists at $1,600. Of course, nobody pays list prices, but you know, you can get it for $13, I think, at most, you know, big box retailers. So, you know, when you invest that kind of money in a guitar, you have to have one that's going to last and that you're going to be willing to take care of. And that goes back to what I was saying about the humidifier earlier as well. I mean, it's just to spend $20 to have the guarantee that you're going to be protected. It's huge. It's a big deal. So, all right. Looks like we're pretty well got our excess dried off. Now, again, I was removing a little bit of dirt, so normally I would probably coat that guy again. Just a little bit, probably not put as much on. I'll give you a quick good example of that. Just do another light spray. And then we'll just kind of dab up any excess that might be sitting there. That way, while we're putting the strings on, it still gives a little bit of a chance to soak in and help condition it and keep it in really good shape. But I'm not going to leave it as wet as I normally would because we're going to have to play after this, and we don't want it to be too oily, greasy when we go to play. But that should be good. Yeah. And it really does. I mean, the way that helps keep the wood from breaking down, from warping, from changing size, all those kind of issues. It's good. Good to prevent when you can. So we'll just get a little bit of that is there as well on the. All right. So we're gonna open up our strings. And of course, D'Addario has their famous colored string ends, so you know what is what. A lot of other companies I've seen do they'll pair, 1 and 4, 2 and 5, 3 and 6. But either way. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with our orange here, or our brass colored rather. We're going to add our little ball to it, thread it through, get it nice and snug down there. And then we're going to place it in there. A lot of times when you go to do this, it's going to try to pop up initially once you start to put tension on it. So you don't always have to worry about trying to get it too snug or anything right away. I do like to pull up so that I know that I've got my total clearance there. And then let me sit this guy down a second. All right, and then we'll get into this. Now, like I was saying earlier, you want to leave about 4. You want to leave about 4 rotations if you can. And come on now, let's try to. There we go. So you can see that a little bit. 4 rotations around the end, and it'll really help with your tuning stability, with not breaking strings, with all those kind of problems. And you just kind of have to do it a couple times and gauge out how far that means you have to let the slack when you start to wind it. And of course, as the strings get thinner, they'll wrap around a little less obtrusively on the headstock here. So, all right, so that should be enough. Probably even a little bit extra there. Throw our string winder on. I like to hold as a pair once I go through, and that way I can sort of keep anything from moving or flopping around on me. Once it gets well past the point of no return here where it's going to have to go under, that's when I like to pull up on the end of it and then allow the rest of the string to come around, and then I'll just put a little bit of pressure there with my finger, and it's kind of like backwards for you to really be able to see it, but then you can wind it and you're holding it. I don't know if you can really see that, but I'm holding it before it gets to the nut, and it just helps keep that tension on so that when it winds here, we're winding tightly. Because if you don't wind tightly, then it's not really gonna work. Then you'll notice sometimes that this will pop up, so you just go ahead and pop it down again. Once it snaps in place like that, you're good. And we'll go back to winding her up here. Alright, make sure he's in the right nut. Throw on my tuner. We'll get a readout here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Not quite. Alright, one string down, 5 to go. So, move on to the orange guy here, thread him up. And then of course you'll notice once you're done, you're going to need to retune everything for a couple reasons. The first reason is because it's going to, by adding the strings one by one, you're increasing the tension on the neck, so it's going to relieve the note value, essentially. And the other reason is because you just put new strings on your guitar and they're going to stretch. You know, when you put new strings on a guitar, it's usually good to play it for a little while to help break them in. I know some people that actually overtune their guitar when they put them on for the sake of helping them stretch out. I really don't recommend that, though. Really don't recommend that. Because it's just one of those really iffy things that, you know, if you stretch them out too far, then you've put on new strings that already sound dead. You know, and that's not what you want. So, alright, that should be enough here. Point of no return, we pull it around there, keep the tension on it. Wind her up. And of course my mic is right next to the guitar here, so it's going to pick up all that lovely noise. And then when this guy starts to pop up on the bridge, as we'll show here, he starts to pop up, you just push him back down until he stays in the spot, you know. And with the Martin here, it kind of clicks. You know, I've played on many cheaper guitars that are not that friendly, and you just kind of have to, you know, get it to sort of stick at a point. But because you're adding the tension at the top at a relative degree, you know what I mean, you're never going to be in any danger here. If you would try to turn it up the whole way, and then it would pop, you know, then you could have issues. But like everything in life, it's somewhat about being gradual. And see there, he tried to pop up again, so we take care of it. Okay, and see, just by adding that one string, we've already taken our E down to a D, so we got the next two paired on here. And then as soon as we get the guitar restrung, we're going to move on to the beginning of the caged theory, which is where it gets really exciting. You know, basically 5 chords unlock the entire neck of the guitar to you. And it doesn't really get much cooler than that. So we'll throw this guy on. And use that pin. Alright. And then after the third low string, we'll go and do the exact reverse on the other side. Specifically with this style of neck. If you have a slotted neck with the roller, you know, again, it's going to be a little bit different as to what you do and don't have to do. But when tuning these, it's just easier because every string stays out of each other's way if you do outside in and outside in. You can start top, you can start bottom, doesn't really make a huge difference. I like to start at the bottom because there's more tension there, so I like to add that earlier. If you do it at the top, you're going to add so much tension that it's really going to change where the strings rest, essentially, as you get started. So that should be enough slack there. A good way to judge is almost if you hold your palm out flat, and that's how much room you've given the string. You know, it's not a bad place to start. Depending on the string, you might want to add or take away from that a little bit, but because again, you want between 2 to 4 windings. I've had some people say you want even more than 4 windings or more, but you definitely want at least 2. That's for sure. See, popped out. So we'll put them back in. Regain that tension. Okay, you'll see each one of those are losing more and more as we go on. Hope I didn't lose one of my balls there. Oh, there it is. Oh. Okay. So we'll put that one on and put it back over here, because the next one we're actually going to do is the high E string. Okay, that should be the silver one. You can always verify on your bag there. Yep, silver is the low E, or the high E, rather. Okay. Come around there, thread it on in. See if we can, there you go. Kind of get the best of both worlds a little bit. So we've got it in over here. Gonna pull up on that tension so it's nice and taut there. Usually you'll have less of a problem with the smaller, or the thinner rather, strings, because the thicker just wanna pull a little bit more. All right. remembering, of course, to leave that slack on there. Well, ha. But I spoke too soon and it popped anyway. Now the question is, where did it go? Oh, it went over here. Alright. No need to worry. Just make sure that we're... There we are, the spot that we want to be. And I don't think it's going to do that again to us here. And it's looking good. So let's do our last two and move on. Again, you know, a lot of people say a good rule of thumb is every month to change your strings. Really depends on how much you play, what kind of strings you play. If you play coated strings, you're not going to need to change them that frequently, because first of all, they're at least twice as expensive as regular strings, so it'll break the bank. But the other reason is you know, that coating is designed to last longer, so it's really the intention. And I've seen people that use elixirs that a lot of them will say they'll go for a year or more without changing strings, you know, or at least 8 months or so. So that can be something to consider. But I just don't really like the sound of coated strings. Just sounds a little bit duller to me. Okay, so get that wrapped around, and keeping our tension on there. All right. Okay, and on to the last one. Of course, the more strings you put on, the more of these are going to try to get in the way. Okay. And that should be enough. Alright, keep our tension on down here. Sometimes these things like to work and sometimes they don't, based on the shape of your headstock. Sometimes they don't fit at all on certain guitars, which can be irritating, but alright, sounds great, right? So now we'll go through and get everyone up where it needs to be. And that'll sort of be the initial stretch. Okay, again, C really doesn't like being positioned over here, but there we go. Okay, and whoops. Okay, get these up one more time. Alright, now, technically it'll say right now that it's tuned, but what you'll find is that as soon as you go to play, you know, they're going to tend to not stay that way for very long. So there's a trick that I have for dealing with that as well. But first we're going to go through and just cut these tops off here, because I just don't like having that in the way. Again, because we've put at least 4 rotations on each string here, we've got no worries about cutting this off. You know, it's never going to pop or come out or anything like that, because it's got all that security wrapped around it. So we're going to go down and do that for each one. And really, I like to even just go right up, if you go flat, right up against the top of it there, and it'll you'll cut about as much as you can off safely, and then it'll never, you know, bite you or catch on anything or any of those troubles, because that's not a good time. And I'm pretty sure we're all out to have a good time. Alright, we have successfully restrung our instrument. But about that trick I was talking about, what I like to do is actually do it while I play. I'll demonstrate it here, but then I'll actually pull it away so I can do it a little bit better. But I just like to go through and around the 5th, 7th, 9th, 12th fret, you know, again, they tend to be used a little bit more than everywhere else, but as far as where the harmonics are and everything, it works out as well. And I just like to give them a good bend. Right on through with each string, and that helps just get, again, rid of that initial new string sound. There we go. And it helps break them a little bit faster, so that then when you go to play a song, at the end of the song they're still going to be a little bit more in tune than they would be initially. So let me do that here really quick, and then we'll retune it. You can kind of hear it's always fun to and then you can hear it really takes it out of tune. But it takes it out of tune evenly, because we already had it pre-tuned, which is kind of cool, you know. Again, or it should, you know, if you have a good neck and a good guitar that you're working with. So we'll go ahead and tune this guy up one more time, and then we'll switch over and we'll do some introduction to the caged theory, and I'll explain what is the caged theory and why would you want to learn it. How is it going to help you be a better guitar player? Well, don't worry, I'll tell you. And again, this guitar has amazing tuners. They're the Grover. Let's see if I can really kind of show them off here. They're the antique style. There we go. And they just hold tune beautifully. So that's something to always consider as well. Some guitars just have lousy tuners, and I've dealt with it. A lot of other people have as well, you know. But now, when you go to play your guitar, you've got that fresh, bright, ringing, beautiful sound that makes you want to play your instrument. So give me one